This is the C64 Mini by retroCombs Limited, and I just love this device. And as you can tell, the Mini inherits its name for sure, because here's the full size over here, and I can't even get it into the view. So let's take a look at what makes this such a fun device, either for old retro computer enthusiasts like myself who've been around with Commodore computers for almost 45 years, and what could make it appealing to someone who's new to Commodore 64s. Well, the first thing you gotta love is in the name right here, Mini. This is extremely mini, and it fits really nicely on your desktop. I've paired it with this little Maxi monitor that just seems to fit nicely with it. But don't get that little Mini name wrong. There is a lot to like here that gives it the features of that full size over there. But let's get this out of the way first. Yes, this keyboard does not work. But if you do need keyboard access, what you'll find is there is a virtual keyboard, and you can also plug in via one of the USB ports a real keyboard so that you can get your typing on with your C64 Mini. So that is an option for you. Also, you do get an included joystick, and this retro-inspired joystick is okay. It's not the best, but it's not bad, but it does include some additional buttons, and we use these controls to navigate through the on-screen carousel. Let's go ahead and turn this on so that you can see the carousel and how we access the games, and you can see a list of the games that are included with the C64 Mini. Okay, we start the C64 Mini by pressing a little button over here for 3 seconds, and within no time, retroCombs, the C64, no Mini, but there is a larger Maxi variant of this with a working keyboard. The functionality is very similar. The only difference between the Maxi and the Mini is the Maxi will also include a VIC-20 emulator. The C64 emulator, though, is equivalent to what you would find on the Maxi. And again, on the Maxi, you would have a real keyboard to type on. So this is what is known as the Carousel. Let's take a quick look at the games in the Carousel. And we can navigate through those games using, of course, our joystick. And retroCombs includes a pretty good selection. I'm sure if you're familiar with the Commodore 64, there will be titles that you will wonder why aren't those included. It would have been impossible for retroCombs to include every single game that everybody wanted. But hold on, I'm going to show you how you can access more games in just a minute. But let's continue to work through the carousel. One of my personal favorites is Galencia Mini. Love it. It's a Galaga clone. Maybe we'll look at that here in a minute. Another popular title is Impossible Mission 1 and 2. Okay, that was all the games included with the C64 Mini. Hopefully you found a couple there you like. Let's go ahead and load one so that you can see what the loading experience is like. And I mentioned Galencia a little bit earlier. Let's give that one a shot. There it is, Galencia Mini. Let's try it. We'll go ahead and load it by hitting this button right here, or this one. Now you'll notice immediately it says F1 for options. Well, how do you get to the options if we don't have a keyboard? That's where these buttons come in handy. You can see that right there, the on-screen keyboard, and you can move around and make your selection. Now, what if you're playing and you want to save that state? We can do that with our menu. Hit that below, hit Save Load, and you can actually save states. And you can have up to 4 states per game so that you can come back later and try that level again if you're not doing so well. Let's go ahead and exit. Now, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see you do have some options. We'll go ahead and touch on those quickly. This is your display options. You can choose how you want the pixels to be displayed, but you can also choose whether you want those scan lines for a retro CRT experience. You also have the option to choose the language for the interface. And then you also have this setting here, which is your device setting. So you can choose your computer model, your boot mode, your USB keyboard. We talked about that. If you want to add that, you can change to make sure that that's in the layout you need. You got your legal notices, your system information. You can switch to classic mode, which I'll show you here in a minute. You can shut down the device, and you can factory reset to fresh, out-of-the-box experience once again. Let me show you computer model. You can see we can do NTSC or PAL, depending on the game we're trying to load or the experience that we had growing up, whether we were in Europe or North America. Come down here to boot mode and you see that we can boot to Carousel or to Classic. Classic will actually boot to the basic interpreter where you could create your own basic programs or your own assembly language programs if you have an assembly language monitor, and create your own software for this device. And you can do that because this also includes a virtual disk drive. I'll show you that here in just a little bit. Your legal notices will pass. Your system information, you can update the firmware, and when additional features are available, retroCombs Limited will post that online. This is the latest firmware as I know it, and it has not been updated for quite some time. I'm not sure that we'll get any new updates. This may be feature rich as we see it now, but when you get your device, make sure you do upload the latest firmware. It's likely not to have the latest firmware depending on how long the original box has been sitting on a shelf or in stock. So let's switch to classic mode so that you can see what that's like. And there you go, Commodore 64 basic version 2, 64K of RAM. Now, what would you do? Well, we would at this point plug in a USB keyboard in order to program in basic. Now, there's another menu here called Media Access. Let me bounce over to there. And if you'll look, it says, cannot read USB stick. This is where the magic with the C64 happens. If you plug in a USB drive, which we are going to do in just a second, you can create your own virtual disks so that you can save programs that you create or type in the basic interpreter on that virtual disk. But you can also simulate a cartridge slot. So if you find .crt files online, like utilities cartridges, such as the Epix Fast Loader, you can also find TAP files or cassette files and load those. So how does all of that work? Well, let me go ahead and bounce out of here. Let's go back to our Carousel mode. And I have a USB drive here just full of Commodore 64 titles. Let's go ahead and plug that into the USB port on the side. And as I do that, I want you to notice down here below. And you see a little USB drive appears. Let's navigate to that drive. And you can now see the contents of that drive. Let's go ahead and load a Homebrew game for the Commodore 64. So you'll see that that is a disk image. You can see that right there. We'll hit fire. And now that Homebrew game is loaded and we can play. By the way, this is a great game. It's all made out of Petski characters. To exit out, we'll hit this button right here. Now, before we exit though, again, remember you do have save and load states if you need that for a specific game. And again, it can be for the games on your USB drive, not just the ones that are built internally. So that's how you can use the USB drive from the Carousel, but what about in classic mode? Let's get rid of this. Let's switch to classic mode. Now we'll hit our menu again. We'll go to our media access down below, and you'll see that we have some additional options. So let me show you how to use that cartridge feature using Super Snapshot. So I'm going to go to our utilities here, which is a folder on my USB drive. I'm just going to select that. And then you see we have a couple of different versions of Super Snapshot. We'll just go ahead and use the NTSC version 5.22, and I'm going to load that down here with the button right here. And now we have Super Snapshot loaded as a cartridge file. How can I verify that? I'll go back here, go to our media access, hit that, and now you'll see our cartridge slot is filled with Super Snapshot. How cool is that? If you want to eject a cartridge, just simply go back to your media access, come down to that item, hit eject, and now that Super Snapshot cartridge or other cartridge is gone. So there's a quick look at the C64 Mini for both beginners and a few advanced features, such as how to use a cartridge and tape, drive, and disk images. I hope you found this review helpful as you decided whether you wanted to pick up a The C64 Mini. That's it for me. retroCombs out.